Hey, 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 ADHDers and allies. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, or Happy Hanukkah to you. How are you all coping with the festivities? Sometimes the expectations or hustle and bustle of the holiday period can be a lot to deal with when you have ADHD, which leads me nicely to tell you what today's podcast episode is all about. Today, we're talking about ADHD and mental health. Those two things are linked together more than a lot of people know. Here to talk about mental health with me, I have Caitlin, who is an ADHD coach. She's worked with both adults and children with ADHD to help them deal with tricky ADHD symptoms, such as emotional regulation, motivation, and organisation. Having ADHD herself, she knows all too well the struggles of living with ADHD on a day-to-day basis. Welcome to the ADHD and Me podcast, Caitlin. It's lovely to have you.
Thank you for having me.
So obviously, today's topic is a really interesting one, and I don't think it's something that's talked about enough when it comes to ADHD, and that's the mental health side. Obviously, mental health in itself is on an increase anyway amongst most people, but there is a link, isn't there, between ADHD and mental health conditions? There's like statistics that show that they go hand in hand.
Yeah, ADHD and then things like anxiety, depression, those things, they're higher in people with ADHD than neurotypical people. Slightly because we face so many more challenges, especially living in a neurotypical world.
Yeah.
We just use extra energy trying to figure things out. Something that's really simple for one person. Someone with ADHD takes a lot of energy, and we can be quite self-critical when we're just not getting things right, and everyone else seems to be doing things so easily, and we're like, why can't I do that?
Yeah,
and then that
pain spiral.
Yeah, definitely. And we can be very self-critical, and we have like really high standards for ourselves that are sometimes really unrealistic.
Yeah.
We don't hit that. It can be really difficult to deal with.
I think you've just pretty much hit the nail on the head of why there is a lot of mental health with ADHD. I don't think a lot of people understand how much mental energy we use up on a day-to-day basis just to try and do simple everyday tasks that other people just do without any kind of thought to it, really. I remember when I was a teacher, and that's like a whole other mental health issue in itself, really. But being a teacher with ADHD, I just think, I do know some teachers who have ADHD, but I think it's much harder just because of the amount of paperwork, the amount of mental energy you have to give to the job. And that's on top of all the other issues that sometimes happen with politics and stuff.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I used to be a teacher as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so I used to be a secondary school teacher. And like you say, it's not just the teaching was great and I could use all my energy, and ADHD went into that so well. But
Yeah, when it's that hard.
Yeah, all the tick boxing and the marking and all the meetings, and there's a lot around it that you don't see, and I just burnt out so quickly.
Yeah. It's a real thing, isn't it, that it's not talked about a lot with ADHD, because a lot of people who think they know someone with ADHD or even know about ADHD, it's all like the high energy and hyperactivity, and nobody thinks about the mental side of how much that leads to burnout.
Yeah, I think like you say, the hyperactivity is, you mentioned ADHD and that's what people think of, but actually there's a lot of internal symptoms in ADHD that people don't see. And that's why when people say everyone's a little bit ADHD, because everyone gets a bit impulsive and but you don't see a lot of what goes on in an ADHD person. It's not being able to solve a problem because you really struggle to visualize it and prioritize, or it's not being able to regulate your emotions very well and things like that. And that's what you don't see. And I think that's where mental health comes into it, because it can be really hard to understand your own brain.
Yeah. And do you think, because obviously we are seeing a rise in mental health issues, and it's not just in the UK, it's right across the globe. Do you think that number correlates to the rise in people being diagnosed with ADHD? Do you think that social media plays a part? Why do you think that mental health is on the increase as a whole?
There's probably a lot of factors that come into it. I think both of what you said are probably some big parts of it. Social Yeah, definitely. I don't know about you, but if I've spent a day where I've been heavy on social media, scrolling, like on a Sunday maybe, I end up feeling really rubbish. And I end up putting strategies in place where I set limits on my social media consumption because I know the negative effect it has on me. But we don't always realize that you can't put two and two together. You scroll all day and you think, I feel rubbish tonight. And you need to put it together sometimes.
Yeah, that's really interesting because when I was teaching, because I taught in colleges, I took part in a campaign that I think is still ongoing every year. It's called Scroll Free September. And it basically encourages teenagers in particular to come off social media. And I said to my college, oh, I'm going to do it and I'm going to report back and see what it was like. And I thought, oh, it shouldn't be too bad. But I did not understand how habitual my habits were to do with social media. Like I'd just be on my phone looking at something. The next minute I'm literally scrolling across trying to find like the Facebook app without even it wasn't even registering. It was almost like my body was that used to finding it and going on it that I wasn't able to think about it.
Yeah, it becomes such a normal thing now, isn't it? That was like, you don't even think about it. And I'm an ADHD coach, and I work with children, teens from 12 onwards, and a couple of the teens I've worked with have struggled with social media. And it's not until like we talk about it, they don't realize what it's doing to their mental health sometimes because it's just social media and they don't think about that, obviously.
And then think people with ADHD might struggle more with the social media aspect, maybe?
Yeah, I definitely think I do. If a friend said that they're too busy, they can't see me, and I see something on social media, I'm then thinking about that, questioning myself.
The thinking aspect, yeah. ADHD is, yeah.
But actually, there's probably a really logical explanation. And if I hadn't been on social media, I'd never have known that she was things like that. So
yeah, that's an interesting point because obviously us ADHDers, one, we're overthinkers. I don't think I've met somebody with ADHD who wasn't an overthinker because we're always worrying about something. So obviously that's not good in terms of the paranoia aspect being on social media because like you said, we're always second guessing people's intentions. And then the other aspect is people with ADHD, we're all or nothing, aren't we, really? We struggle to maintain some kind of healthy boundary in most aspects of our life. And again, that probably fits in with the mental health side as well.
Yeah, definitely. Because we're all or nothing when it comes to like self-care, we're either doing all the self-care in the world and living our best life and
yeah,
or maybe burning ourselves out from doing too much self-care, or we're doing no self-care because we're like,
but if I feel guilty about it.
Yeah, because we're like, if I can't do it properly, I'm not going to do it at all. When actually just one self-care activity a day can make such a big difference. But we won't do it sometimes because we think, oh, it's all or nothing.
Yeah, do you know what? You could be talking about me. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I do such good at self-care. The next day I'm like, not even drank any water today. What's going on?
Exactly. I think it's because a lot of us are perfectionists and I think we're trying to do everything. I'm like, make sure I'm drinking water and having sleeping well and eating well and exercising and doing my skincare and all these different things. And as soon as one slips, I feel like I'm not, oh,
that's it, give it up, that's it, I've had it.
Yeah, but it's really difficult to navigate and it's hard to get used to being imperfect.
Do you know what? I'm reminded of the reason I hate colouring because most kids and even some adults enjoy colouring to help de-stress. But if I go over that line just a little bit, I'm like, I'm done. That's it. I'm out this game.
That's it. If I even so it's silly when I used to work in like a full-time office role, I used to write my to-do list and I'd highlight things in certain colours. If I put the wrong colour in the wrong category or something, I'd rip the whole page out and start again. And the manager once said to me, "You're wasting a lot of time doing."
And people listening to that, they can probably understand where the burnout comes from because we're so busy trying to get it right and then failing and then judging ourselves for not getting it right. Just a vicious cycle, isn't it?
Yeah, we're often so preoccupied on like all the minor details that we miss the main part. If you're trying to do a project, we're spending just planning the project and getting the materials and getting a nice notebook. And then by the time it comes to actually do the thing we want to do, we've lost interest, we've lost motivation. It seems too difficult and it's overwhelming. And yeah, that can be really difficult to navigate and understand.
Yeah. And obviously I think we're better than we were, but there's still a stigma around men and boys in particular with mental health issues. Now, more boys than girls get diagnosed with ADHD. And that's not saying that girls don't have it. It's just that boys tend to be picked up a lot easier. But obviously, boys with ADHD who have mental health issues, that's got to be a really tricky kind of thing to navigate, really, because you still got this persona of, oh, men can't talk about the feelings, men can't do this, do that. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think typically the external symptoms of ADHD, hyperactivity, they are associated with males. And the internal symptoms, like the emotional dysregulation, they are more associated with females. Actually, we both get both parts. And everybody gets different bits to varying degrees. Like everybody with ADHD is different. Like someone might not be really hyperactive, but really struggle with organization. But another person might really struggle with emotional regulation. And that's like irrespective of their gender. And I think sometimes we forget that men and boys do also experience like emotional dysregulation and RSD, those kind of things. And if we increase the awareness of that, which is getting better, there's definitely a lot more awareness.
Yeah.
But there's still an area there where it's not fully accepted, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And a little bit of a controversy, obviously, for both of us, were former teachers. Do you think the education system in its current format is helping people with ADHD, or do you think it varies per school? Or what do you think that maybe mental health issues comes from that aspect? Because I can see it in two parts. Because when I was in high school, I had an absolutely horrific time. I was bullied because of the ADHD, thought I was thick and couldn't learn in a way that they were trying to teach me. So I only left with one GCSE in the only subject that I'm naturally good at anyway. So for me, I look back at my high school experience and thought, what was the point of me being there apart from the whole negative experience? What do you think about that, like ADHD in schools and kind of mainstream education?
I think there's definitely a lot more that needs to be done. And I think the problem is teachers are so overworked and they can only do so many things in a classroom. Like I used to teach bottom set year 9. It was about 60% of the students had autism, ADHD, some sort of extra learning.
Sad though that the bottom sets are the ones with all the additional needs.
Yeah, and it's those kids need actually more support to learn. And putting them all together, and they've all got different needs as well within class. And I had one TA to support me with all these students that needed all this extra support. And it's just physically impossible. So you do your best. There needs to be more teaching assistants that can give that one-to-one support for those that need it. But also, a lot of teachers don't really know what ADHD is because they get the bare minimum training on it, which is sad. Like I understand teachers are very busy in there, and there's a lot of different things to learn about when you're becoming a teacher. But actually, if you understand what ADHD is and how it presents in girls and boys and the different things that aren't like RSD, a rejection sensitive dysphoria, something that's really coming out like in social media and things. There's no research on it. And I think if you ask most people who don't have ADHD, they've never heard of it. People are experiencing this and there's just no support for them. And I think in school, that's the most critical part of a child's life. And we just need to be spreading more awareness, more education, and then also more funding.
That's what, yeah, absolutely. I think you bang on the money there. I just think if anybody's wondering, obviously, why we're talking about education in terms of mental health, it sets you up for life, not just in terms of a job, but your whole mindset, isn't it? Until I went to university and actually did well at university, I generally thought I was stupid. It really impacts how you see yourself. This is why we're talking about it in terms of mental health, because it's such a big part of it, because it gives you the tools that you're going to either use to empower yourself with or use to destroy yourself with.
Definitely. And in one of the first schools I ever worked at before I trained to be a teacher, I was just like I was a cover teacher, and I became one of the mental health leads, and we started a program for students to have a buddy, a staff member as a buddy who they could go to for just an ear really to listen to them. And they had like basic mental health training, and they could just support them and just know that if someone they could talk to and refer them to the right places if they needed it. And it wasn't until we started doing it, we realized how many students were struggling and how many wanted a buddy. And there was that, we struggled to get enough buddies for students. And it wasn't until then you realize how much kids are going through.
Yeah.
Just across the board.
That's just it. Like, there's lots of neurotypical people who have mental health issues as well. This is not just ADHD, but what we're saying is when you have ADHD as well, and then you bring mental health in with that, it can have such an impact on somebody's life. Now, obviously, we are in December, so Christmas is coming up, and I don't know about you, but the overwhelm for Christmas can be massive with ADHD. One of my coping strategies for dealing with a lot of symptoms of my ADHD is external organisation strategies. And I have to work really hard at them. But I'm like, I've got to get all my shopping and everything done by October and then I'll be fine. Would you agree? Do you think Christmas is a difficult time of year for people with ADHD?
Yeah, definitely. The idea of get ready for Christmas is such a vague, huge task. And as an ADHD, I find that hard to break down into something. And I need to plan who I'm buying for. I need to budget so I don't get to the end of December with no money. And I need to make sure I've done it by a certain point. And often, most years, I just leave it to the last minute and get stressed. And if you haven't got, like you say, your like external organisation systems and ways to navigate, it can be really difficult. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And also there's that expectation again, isn't it? We talk about expectations for people with ADHD. That can be a huge thing. We're constantly seeing that in the American Christmases on TV or in movies, or the big Hallmark Christmas with a giant tree and every day has to be doing something special like decorating biscuits. And we try to live up to that. And it seems silly when you're talking about it from a practical point of view because no one can do that much. But we want to buy it because a lot of ADHDers, we tend to be dreamers. So we want to buy into the dream. We want that big Christmas.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where social media comes in as well, because we're seeing it from people around us. Because everyone obviously wants to do all these nice Christmas things. Some people have more capacity than others. Some people have more money. Some people have more time. Some people have got better health. So you can't directly compare yourself to if you're poorly and you can't go out extravagant days out because you've got a health condition or something. You can't compare yourself to someone else. Or likewise, if you're struggling financially and someone's paying for a trip to Lapland, you can't compare yourself. And actually, what we've found as a family over the last few years is we just enjoy the silly things like decorating gingerbread houses, or my dad
spending time, isn't it, together?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like just like the little things that my dad sends. He's got a little group chat for everyone, and he sends a Christmas song every morning in December, like a little advent calendar. It costs no money. It takes about 5 minutes of his time.
That's so cute. I love that.
Yeah, like we try and make it special with things like that rather than extravagant gifts and days out and things. Also, we like to do them, but you can't constantly do those things, and you've got to remember that on social media is only a tiny portion of someone's lives.
Yeah, and what that brings us nicely into the topic of guilt and shame spiraling, which is extremely common for people with ADHD. Now, everyone is capable of obviously guilt and shame spiraling to a certain degree, but because of the RSD, like you mentioned before, that seems to be our most common go-to place, really. It's a difficult one to navigate, isn't it? And I think I generally feel like a lot of people with ADHD, when they were younger, not so much now, but when I was younger, suffered very much with low self-esteem. And it's hard not to, let's be honest, in a world that, like you said, it's very based on neurotypical people. It's not based on people with ADHD. There wasn't a lot of adaptions when I was younger. And that was like a normal thing to me. It was, I was blaming myself for everything. I was blaming myself for decisions other people were making that I had no control over. And I still do it now to a certain degree. But then I have to remember it's okay not to be everything to everyone. It's okay. I am worthy of not being stuck in this place, not being stuck in that shame spiral. But for some people, it's quite a toxic thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really hard to get out of that place in your head when you are in a spiral. And you can learn strategies to help deal with it. It does help to an extent. But I think we'll always have, it's just like a habit, especially if you are not being like that. It's difficult to break that habit. But I found even just understanding about my ADHD and then joining Facebook groups and little communities of people with ADHD and post constantly, people asking for help and saying, I'm struggling with this. And you think, oh, I struggle with that.
It's that awareness, isn't it? That this isn't just me. This is a very normal thing for ADHD. And this doesn't mean that I shouldn't like myself. Because I think it's greatly, I'm not too sure which one impacts which, whether the low self-esteem, and that's where the guilt and shame spiral comes from, or the shame spiral and guilt is where the low self-esteem from it. So it's a bit of a tricky one, that, isn't it, to navigate?
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on to understand with ADHD and like emotional regulation and things. There's a lot of research coming out now, and I think will come out and hopefully clear up the links a little bit better and help us understand why we get so emotionally dysregulated. I think it's important to prioritize yourself as well, which is really hard to do if you're not used to doing it. And setting your own boundaries and saying, there's nothing, this is not my situation, or this is not, I need to protect my own mental health here, and this is what I need to do. Yeah, that's really hard to do. But I think as people learn more about their ADHD and they learn what they need, they then feel more confident to say, actually, with gift giving, if you're open with your family and say, I struggle with ADHD, like, because of my ADHD, I sometimes struggle to understand what people want or need, because I struggle to see it from their point of view, or I overspend, or whatever your issue is. If you talk to the people around you, if you are lucky enough to have close family and friends that you can talk to, if they can just be a bit more empathetic and say, it doesn't matter what you get me, I'm happy no matter what, and take that pressure off you. If you have that, definitely use it.
That's it, isn't it? And I think that's such an important point that you touched on, because obviously ADHD and mental health do go hand in hand. It's so important, isn't it, to have the kind of people around you who not only are empathetic, but are going to work through some of your issues with you.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people with ADHD, and this is why like people have come to coaching, because it just helps sort out all those kind of
breaks them down.
Yeah, and talking to someone and actually being able to say, this is what I'm experiencing, but I'm also experiencing this, and figuring it out can make a massive difference for sure.
Most people, even non-ADHDers, have gone through some kind of mental health issue at some point. Have you ever had a personal experience of mental health issues with your ADHD?
Yeah, like you say, I don't think there are many people that can say never struggle.
That'd be nice.
If that's true, lucky.
Yeah, right. And it must be great living in that world.
Yeah, for me, it's when I experience burnout that I feel,
yes.
Because I will pile things on. So I'll fill my calendar, because I do like to be busy, but I'll overfill it. And then I'll have deadlines that didn't even need to be there. And then I've got to keep to those deadlines. And then I'll pile more and more stuff on myself. And self-care will disappear, and relaxation will disappear. And I'll burn out completely to the point where I don't get out of bed for days. And then you start to feel really down and in a spiral where you can't get back out because it's overwhelming, because you've burnt yourself out, and you think, how do I go back to everything when it's completely in this place? And so trying to avoid burnout is normally my number one key to protect them.
I feel like you could be talking about me there, because I'm very guilty of that myself. I also get the anxiety aspect as well, because of the overthinking aspect. Particularly, sorry for any guys who are listening to this, but PMS can be a big factor in I get the worst anxiety. I mean, I think it's common with PMS anyway, but because of the overthinking, it just makes it all 10 times worse. I actually think that mental health services are not very well equipped in this country to deal with a lot of the mental health issues. Is that something you would agree with, Caitlin?
Yeah, definitely. When I've looked at going to therapy before, I wanted specific therapy that took out my ADHD, because I'd had therapists in the past who weren't ADHD specialists.
Yeah, makes a difference.
Yeah, I found I wasn't being understood properly, and they would say, oh, well, just go do that. Why aren't you doing that?
And I was looking at it from a neurotypical approach, which doesn't benefit us.
Yeah, but within the NHS, to actually get any sort of ADHD specific kind of therapy, very, very, very.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen, they've now developed this ADHD task force within the NHS. Now, I'm hopeful that can mean something good, but my worry is it's just a way of them trying to reduce waiting lists for ADHD, and they're just looking at how they can get that waiting list down and the politics of it instead of looking at it from actually what people with ADHD need. Because let's be honest, it's not just people with ADHD who suffer from mental health. Accessing any mental health services in this country is so difficult. But then if you've got ADHD as well, it's so tricky, isn't it?
It's like when I was diagnosed, got diagnosed for the NHS, and they went to my appointment after they'd given my diagnosis, went back to got referred to the actual adult ADHD clinic and went to my first appointment, and she went, "Are you having medication?" I went, "Oh, I don't know yet, because I don't really know much about it. I thought I'd like to try some sort of therapy first." And she was like, "Oh, no, if you don't have medication, you'll be discharged." I think,
yeah, it was all about the meds, isn't it? There's nothing else beyond the meds.
It was not even an option. She said therapy doesn't work for ADHD. And I was like, really?
Wow.
Therapy doesn't work? And I understand there are some aspects of the ADHD which can be really well managed with medication. But there are some aspects which I just felt like I needed. Well, yeah. It wasn't offered. And I just thought the medical model is obviously where we've always been driven by the medical model. But actually, we need to start looking away from that. We need the medications are obvious, but there needs to be other things on offer for people who. A lot of people can't have ADHD medication if you're pregnant, breastfeeding. A lot of people choose not to because it can make you lose a lot of weight, and people who are at risk of weight, like being like anorexic, can't take it. There are a lot of people that can't and don't want to take it, and then what's on offer for those people?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for joining me, Caitlin. So where can people go if they want to find out about any of your ADHD coaching?
Yeah, my social media. I've also got a website. If you just type in ADHD Coach Caitlin, I'm sure you'll find me. Get in touch.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I feel like we can only scratch the surface of mental health and ADHD. There's so much to discuss, but really, I think we've captured some of the important information, I think.
If you've been affected by anything you've heard today in the podcast episode, please reach out to a loved one or someone you trust. Alternatively, if you're in the UK, you can contact the Samaritans on 116123. Or if you're based in the USA, you can ring Mental Health America on 988, where they will provide you with more localized resources. I just want to finish by saying this. Sometimes we can put that much effort into chasing the ideal holiday that we lose ourselves and sacrifice our own happiness. Don't let the idea of a perfect holiday make you think that anything less isn't ideal. Just focus on being with the right people and celebrating in a way that makes you and others happy. However you spend your holiday season, I hope you have a good one. See you in 2025. ADHD is an allies, and take care.